didn't fight back. I didn't cry. I just picked up my purse, took my daughter's hand, and walked out of my own brother's restaurant opening like I was a stranger who had wandered in by mistake. That was 8 months ago. And I think about it almost every day, not with anger anymore, but with this strange, quiet clarity that comes after you've already survived the worst of it. Let me back up. My brother Donovan, sorry, I still call him that out of habit even though I've been trying to stop, had been dreaming about opening a restaurant since we were kids. He'd watch cooking shows at 11 o'clock at night with our dad, scribbling fake menus on notebook paper. Growing up, food was the thing that made him feel like himself. I always believed in that dream, even when no one else did. Our parents were skeptical. Our dad thought a restaurant was a money pit. Our mom just worried about stability. But I was the one who sat across from him at his kitchen table 5 years ago when he laid out his business plan on a legal pad and said, "Tell me honestly, do you think I can do this?" I said yes. I meant it. What I didn't know then was that saying yes would eventually cost me $58,000. It didn't happen all at once. That's the thing about these situations. They never do. It starts with something small, something that feels like just helping out. His first request was $4,000 for a commercial-grade refrigeration unit because the one he'd budgeted for got discontinued. I had the money sitting in savings. I transferred it the same afternoon he asked. Then it was $9,000 for permits and licensing fees that ran over what his contractor had estimated. Then $12,000 when his primary investor pulled out 6 weeks before the scheduled opening. Each time, he came to me with that same look, half embarrassed, half desperate, and each time I told myself this was the last one. Each time I was wrong. By the time his restaurant, a place he named Aldgate, was ready to open, I had given him $58,000 over 14 months, my own savings. Money I'd set aside after my divorce when I was rebuilding my life from scratch with a 7-year-old daughter who needed stability more than anything. I want to be clear about something. He never asked me to sign a loan agreement. I never asked him to sign one either. That was my mistake, and I own it. But here's what I told myself at the time. He's my brother. He's family. This is what family does. His wife, on the other hand, I'll just call her what she was to me, my sister-in-law, had made it clear from the start that she thought I was overstepping. She'd been polite about it in that brittle, glassy way that means the opposite of polite. She once told me at Thanksgiving that I was too involved in Donovan's business decisions. I smiled and passed the rolls. She was the one who handled the guest list for the opening night. The restaurant's grand opening was a Friday evening in October. Donovan had been texting me all week, excited, nervous, grateful. He sent me a voice message the Tuesday before that I still have on my phone. He said, "I couldn't have done this without you. I mean that. Friday night is going to be everything." I bought a new dress. I got my daughter a little velvet headband she'd been wanting. I told her we were going to celebrate Uncle Donovan's big night, and she asked if there would be pasta, because she was 7, and pasta was her entire personality at the time. We showed up at 7 o'clock. The place was already full. Warm lighting, candles on every table, jazz playing low. It looked exactly like what he described to me all those years ago on that legal pad. I felt genuinely proud. That's the part that still catches me off guard when I think about it. I was proud of him. We walked up to the host stand and gave our names. The hostess looked down at her list. She looked again. She turned to the second page, then back to the first. She smiled the careful smile of someone delivering bad news with maximum professionalism. "I'm so sorry," she said. "I don't see you on the confirmed guest list." I told her my name again. I told her Donovan was my brother. She excused herself and came back 2 minutes later with a man I didn't recognize, someone in a dark blazer who seemed to be managing the floor that evening. "Ms. Weston," he said, "I've been asked to let you know that tonight's event is at capacity and the guest list has been finalized. I'm not able to seat you this evening." I stood there for a second, genuinely confused. My daughter was holding my hand and looking up at the hostess stand like she was trying to figure out the rules of a game nobody had explained to her. "Can you call my brother?" I said. "Donovan. He owns this restaurant." The manager's expression didn't change. "I understand. He's currently occupied with his guests. We're not able to interrupt him at this time." I looked past him into the dining room. I could see Donovan near the bar laughing at something, a glass of champagne in his hand. He was maybe 30 feet away. He didn't look up. My daughter tugged my hand. "Mom, are we going in?" I crouched down to her level and kept my voice steady. "Not tonight, baby. Change of plans." We walked back to my car. I buckled her in. I sat in the driver's seat for 60 seconds and did not let myself cry in front of her. Then I drove home. I didn't call Donovan that night. I didn't text. I put my daughter to bed, came downstairs, and sat in my kitchen in that dress I'd bought for the occasion, and I just sat there, thinking. I thought about the $58,000. I thought about the $58,000. I thought about the refrigerator and the permits and the investor who pulled out. I thought about my sister-in-law's comment at Thanksgiving. I thought about the fact that I was a single mother who had spent most of her savings helping a dream come true that I was then locked out of on its best night. And I thought about one more thing. I was the one who had dealt with his primary contractor for the kitchen renovation. When his original contractor quit 4 months in, Donovan had been traveling for a supplier meeting and asked me to handle the transition. I'd signed the scope of work agreement on behalf of the LLC. Donovan had added me as an authorized representative so I could deal with the vendors directly. He'd said it was just to make things easier while he was traveling. That authorization had never been revoked. I didn't do anything with that information that night. I just knew it was there. Donovan called me the next morning at 10. I let it go to voicemail. He called again at 10:15. I listened to that one. "Hey, I heard there was some mix-up at the door last night," he said. "I'm so sorry about that. I think there was a miscommunication with the list. Can we talk?" Miscommunication. That was the word he chose. I called him back. He answered immediately, which told me he'd been sitting there waiting. He started with the same word, miscommunication, and I let him finish his sentence, and then I asked him one question. "Did you know I wasn't on the list?" Silence. 3 seconds of it. "It was a small venue," he said. "We had to make hard choices about capacity." "That's not what I asked." Another pause. She thought it would be better to keep it too. She wanted it to be more of an industry crowd, investors, press, that kind of thing. She, his wife, she had decided that I, the person who had kept his dream alive with $58,000 of my own money, was not the right kind of guest for his opening night. "Okay," I said. "Okay?" "That's it. That's it for now," I said, and I hung up. I didn't speak to a lawyer first. I want to be honest about that. What I did next came from somewhere more instinctive than strategic, though it turned out to be effective. I called the contractor, a man named Hargrove, who I'd worked with directly for months and who had always been straightforward with me. I told him I was calling as an authorized representative of the LLC, which was technically still true, and I asked him about the status of the final punch list items that were still outstanding from the original scope of work. There were several, some shelving in the dry storage room, a ventilation fix in the back kitchen, a few other things that had been deferred to post-opening. Hargrove said he'd been waiting on a payment installment before scheduling that work. He said the check hadn't come through yet. I told him I understood and that given the outstanding items and the payment gap, I was placing a temporary hold on the work order pending a review of the contract terms. As the authorized representative, I had that right under the agreement. Hargrove was quiet for a moment. "Okay," he said. "I'll note that in the file." That was it. I didn't threaten anyone. I didn't yell. I just used the access I'd been given, the one that had never been taken away, to pause something that had not yet been completed. 3 hours later, Donovan called me back. This time his voice was different. The casual, smoothing things over tone was gone. "What did you do?" he said. "I placed a hold on the outstanding contractor work," I said. "There were unresolved items in the punch list and a payment gap. It seemed like the responsible thing to do as an authorized representative." "You can't do that." "I can, actually. I'm still listed as an authorized representative on the LLC documents. Donovan, you never removed me." A long silence. "This is insane," he said. "You're doing this because of one dinner." And that was the moment, the one where I realized that to him, that's what it had been. One dinner. Not 8 months of calls, not 14 months of transfers, Not my daughter standing at a host stand in a velvet headband asking if we were going in. No, I said. I'm doing this because $58,000 deserves more than a miscommunication. He told me I was being vindictive. He told me I was going to damage his opening. He told me his wife had nothing to do with it, which was the one thing I was certain was a lie. He told me that what I was doing was probably illegal, which it wasn't, but I let him believe it might be for exactly as long as it took for him to get the point. Then he said something that surprised me. Is there anything I can do to fix this? Not fix us, not apologize. Fix this. The situation, the problem I had created for him. Yes, I said. I'd like a formal repayment plan, in writing, for what I lent you, signed. And I want you to acknowledge in writing that what happened Friday night was a deliberate decision, not a miscommunication. He went quiet again. She's not going to like that. That's between you and her, I said. He called me back 2 hours later. He said he'd spoken to his accountant and they could put together a repayment plan, $1,500 a month, starting the first of the following month, with the full amount to be repaid within 4 years. He said he was sorry for Friday. He didn't say his wife's name. He didn't say she was sorry, but he said he was. I told him I needed it in writing before I lifted the hold. He sent a signed letter the next morning via email with a PDF attachment on LLC letterhead. The repayment plan was attached. His signature was on both documents. I called Hargrove and released the hold the same afternoon. I want to tell you something about the days after that because I think this is the part that people don't talk about enough. There was no celebration. There was no moment where I felt like I'd won something. What I felt mostly was tired, the kind of tired that isn't about sleep. It's about having spent so long giving energy to something that was quietly taking it. My daughter asked me one morning if we were going to see Uncle Donovan at Christmas. I told her I wasn't sure yet. She accepted that in the easy way that children accept things they sense are complicated but don't have words for yet. Then she asked if there would be pasta at Christmas, regardless of who was there. I told her absolutely yes. That made me laugh for the first time in a while, a real one. My sister-in-law sent me a text about 3 weeks later. It was 2 sentences. She said she thought I had handled everything in a very cold and calculated way, and that she hoped I was proud of myself. I read it once, saved it, and didn't respond. I was proud of myself, actually, but not for the reason she meant. I was proud because I had spent years believing that being generous meant being available, that loving someone meant absorbing whatever they handed you and calling it family. I had let that belief cost me money I worked hard for, and more than that, it had cost me something harder to quantify. The version of myself who knew her own value. She's back now, that version. She's quieter than she used to be, and a little more careful. But she's there. The repayment started on the first of the following month, just like the letter said. I set up a separate savings account for them. I'm not saving for anything specific yet, but it feels right to keep that money separate, like it belongs to a chapter that's still being written. Donovan and I haven't had dinner together since before the opening. We've texted a handful of times, logistics mostly, things about our parents, a birthday acknowledgement here and there. I don't know what we are to each other right now. I think we're both still figuring that out. What I know is this. I went to that opening night because I loved my brother and I was proud of what he built. Some of what he built with my help. I deserved to be in that room. Not as a creditor, not as a business associate, but as his sister. As someone who believed in him when the legal pad was still just a dream. He forgot that. I didn't. And somewhere in the distance between those two things is where we are now. Two people who grew up in the same house, who know each other in all the ways that only siblings do, standing on opposite sides of a door that one of us closed. I haven't decided yet whether to knock, but I'm no longer standing outside it with my hand raised, waiting to be let in.